last meeting we had here, Senator Green was here, and he mentioned something about every person in the state of Michigan, man, woman, boy, child, girl, child, that we were contributing 70. He thought it was around $75 per year, every year, to the city of Detroit. Do you know anything about that, and how? I mean, like, I live in Tuscola County. Why should I contribute $75 to the city of Detroit? I didn't. He didn't have too much information on that.
I've even heard higher. I've heard 80% actually. Mike and I had a little discussion on that. He has some more information. Actually, Mike shared some of that with me a couple of weeks ago. So we're going to finish up with anything else in the DEQ. Was there another? Because I want to go to education, and that's where the big dump is.
Oh, the question I wanted to ask you, Senator Green was here last time. We talked about taxing these pensions. Now I hear the VA is not going to be taxed. I want to know what your position is on taxing pensions that the governor's got in his budget. And do you guys just vote on his budget, or would that be a standalone bill?
No, everything will go to committee. Everything will go to committee. What the speaker has asked for, what they haven't done in the past, where there's been things just brought up right at the House, here's a bill, and representatives would walk in the House floor, and all of a sudden they're standing there and voting for something that they never even had seen before in committee. So the policy is, at a minimum, it'll go before committee, unless it's something that's a real emergency, an amendment or something like that, that was just overlooked during the creation of one of the laws. It will go to committee, be fully vetted at least twice, so that's 2 full weeks before it's voted on, and then it will be voted on, and then it goes from committee to the House floor.
What's your position?
Yeah, on what?
On taxing on the pension.
Well, I think you need to explain the pensions. I'm going to skip. Can we hold off on the school for just a minute? Let's go talk on the pensions. There's supposed to be a calculator out right now on the pensions. We just had the AARP group down lobbying, which was a real nice group. Man, were they mean. That was some people you didn't want to tangle with at any age. But you know what? The thing that was interesting is though I got to speak with a few people that were down there from our district, and they came in the office and we sat down. And I said, "Do you understand, you know, what the brackets are and the homestead thing?" And we sat down and talked to them. And the 2 guys that were there, God bless them, they had made a great TV show. It's like The Odd Couple. As the guy looked at him, he said, "Jerry," he said, "you know that AARP's been lying to us? I told you we shouldn't have wasted our time coming down." And the other guy said, "Yeah, what do you want to do?" He said, "Let's get down the elevator and get the heck out of here." Used some different words, but they were mad. Yes, when that was presented as, I don't have a lot of detail on the pension tax, but it was amazing how many people in the state of Michigan are working even up till age 70. And when they did some side-by-sides, and they said, "Now here's a couple over here. They're in their 60s and they're working. Okay, maybe their pension fell to pieces, maybe something, and not a lot of people have pensions, you know." So anyways, here they are working. They're paying, and I'm going to bring the screen back here at one of your maybe the next meeting, so I can show you this picture. And here's the couple that was in their 60s, and they were working, making 10 or 20,000 more than the person over here that had the pension. Now the person over here that had the pension is paying no taxes, and then had the property tax exemption. And the couple that was over here in their 60s were making $15,000 more a year, and they were paying, $15,000 less a year than the couple over here that were making nothing on the pension, and they were paying $1,400 a year in taxes. Now they're making less money. They didn't have the pension. They had to keep working. And they're paying $1,400 a year in taxes. 1,000 of that went to the state, and 400 of that went to their neighbor, because their neighbor got a kickback. Now the tax, if I understand it right, that tax kicks in at about $40,000 to $45,000. It seemed to be fairly minimal at the $40,000 to $45,000 range, where that kicked in on the pension. And what we looked at is, how many people in my district will that affect? Very, very few people. So it really doesn't affect a lot of people. But I don't have the details on that. We've been waiting for the governor to give us the calculator. Now somehow AARP had it all figured out. I didn't even see what it was before they had this whole thing all figured out. It was kind of like what the MEA sent their newsletter out, having all this information before we knew what was going on and it even came to the House and the Senate. And I found out that most of that information was wrong. They do it to stir people up, to get memberships going, send in your check. Hey, we got a special pack going on. Send us an extra $50 to $100 right now because we got to fight this in Lansing. We were still waiting for the details on this. Now the calculator was supposed to have been out last Friday that showed us where you could plug in the pension and the property tax and all this other thing. But I will tell you what Snyder's agenda is very simple. It's going to be fair for everyone. And people that have complained about where they get to that $45,000 bracket on pensions, they're looking at two things. And here was a point brought up from some grandparents, some people I know, whose kids, we lost 6,000 people in our district over the last several years. That's 6,000 young people with kids. That's who left. Now the guy said, he stood up and said, you know what? My pension will get taxed. I had a very good pension. Worked for the UAW. He said, I want my grandkids home. I'm willing to pay it. And he said, you know what? Well, I was making my living over the last 70 years. My parents didn't leave me with the mess. I'm leaving my grandkids. He said, that clears it up for me. And I said, I make a good pension. He says, I'm willing to pay it.
I know one other thing I want to ask you though.
Sure.
You know, when we took these early pensions to get out, it was designed to give these younger guys the jobs. Now, if you're going to do that stuff, people ought to know so they can plan. Maybe I'd still be working. You ever think of that?
And that's some of the other discussion that's going on right now. Is the fact that once you make a promise, I mean, you need to stick with it.
Well, people make a life decision based on what they're told. All right, now you get out here on a fixed income, and now they want taxes.
Well, and then here's the other guy that said, I don't get a pension, but I made an investment, and I bought stock, and I lost everything, and now I'm 70 years old, and I have nothing, and I'm back at Walmart. You know, so you know, we've got so many sides to the court. Here's the net.
Well, but
and there's both sides here.
Except that money is a tax shift. He's given $1.8 billion tax relief to business, and then wants to collect it over here. That's just a money shift. That ain't a budget balance.
On that also, now, it's not a matter of taking from here and giving it to business. Nothing's being given to business anymore. Do you know what's been given to business? You know what's been given to business in these tax credits? Do you know we're paying on these tax credits to industry till, 2032? Into the billions of dollars? I think it's $2 billion up until 2032 has been given by, I think just even over the last 8 years, most of it's been handed out. So we've given some of these big companies these huge tax credits. And that's when Snyder said, enough's enough. It's not going to happen anymore. And, you know, there's not going to be an answer that will make everybody happy. I don't have a lot of detail on the pension tax. That's one thing I haven't been in on. I've been waiting for this calculator to come out. And I wanted the calculator to come out and have people use it in the district and then kind of gauge what percentage of our residents that would affect. But so far when we talked about it, that $40,000 or less, it affects very few people. But it will affect some people.
Kurt, I'm one of those fellows who belong to ARP. I also have lucky enough to work 40 years to earn a pension, which I paid every cent owed by every tax that was ever invented. And so I'm looking at this taxing of pensions also. I mean, I've paid every tax that was ever asked of me. But I have a pension. It's less than $45,000. And that's where we're at with it.
And so from what I understand, you wouldn't have any of that pension taxed.
That's current law.
Yeah. You know, like I said, I really want to see what the formula is on this calculator. You may go home and put if the calculator's up, go on to Michigan Governor, or Michigan.gov Governor, and that's where the calculator was supposed to have been up last Friday. And that's what their postulants had told us it was going to be online. I didn't look in the last couple of days, but it's supposed to be up at least this week. And then what you can do everything from your property tax and put your income, and you'll see. You know, what we found out is the worst case scenario was many of these people that were not paying any tax on their pensions. Here was the worst case scenario. Most of those people were getting money back. They paid nothing on their pensions, and they had the full tax credit on the homestead. And they were getting $400, $500, $800 or whatever back. So really the worst case scenario in most of those cases, it came back to the point where you just got nothing back. Which, you know, who planned on that $400 kicker every year or $800 tax kickback when they were doing their retirement program? You know, you were planning on your pension, you weren't planning on that $800. So if we took it to a zero balance, I think that would be fair. If you're not paying tax on your pension, and you're in that situation, or you're paying tax on, you get nothing back. That's all it is.
A couple of quick points. You just made one. How many pensions have been funded pre-tax during the years that people have been working, wherever they've been working? And then why should, like you said, if they've already gotten to their pension in their life and they're already not paying tax, why should they give it?
That's if they were taxed. If they were taxed as they put the money into the pension, or a lot of
How
those.
many of them are pre-tax?
Oh, I don't think there's that many that are pre-taxed.
Some of them are. I'm just curious
Yeah.
what the numbers are.
You know what, that one's way out of my league. If we really want to get into it, I can bring somebody and we'll get into the details of that. But I would really be speaking out of line if I thought I knew the answer to all of that.
Hey, Gordon,
Yeah.
one last question on that, and then I'll drop it. When you're talking about this $45,000 on pensions, what else are they gonna use to get you up there? What about if you had lucky enough to have any CD money or anything like that? Is that all gonna be calculated, or are they talking strictly about the pension?
No, I think it was just strictly on the pensions, either your combined pension or individual pension if you're a single person.
Because I heard they were gonna say if you had a 401k or whatever other interest income, would all be calculated in to get you up to that level like
Yeah.
they do Social Security.
You know, I'm sorry, I can't comment on that because I would just be guessing. I can't give you a detail. That's when we'll have to go online or come here to the library if you don't have a computer at home and jump on that. That's the Michigan governor, or Michigan.gov governor. And it's supposed to be up. I mean, I'm waiting to see that site just as much as you are. Although I've got some details on it, I'm surely not a CPA.
Question to you is, we got all these ideas for taxes, and we got all these supposedly educated legislators in Lansing. The simplest thing, talking to different people, would be just to raise the sales tax a penny.
Well, you know what's even on the books? Not on the books, but even being discussed is the Michigan fair tax is still being discussed. Is to eliminate that. I really like that. I mean, that 9% sales tax, that's so clean. You know, it's so clean, but you know what? When that is in committee, it will be fully vetted. That means a lot of those taxes go away, and you pay on when you purchase something. Your paycheck isn't taxed. Yeah, you pay on it one time. That's what I like about it. You get taxed once. And we've been getting a lot of information on that, and that has come up in several meetings already. They say, we've got the governor's proposal, but listen, we want to see some other things. And first they said, well, how many people know about the Michigan fair tax? About 15 of us raised their hand. How many people would like to hear it? And just about everybody raised their hand. We want to hear every proposal that's available to make sure we do it right the first time. Now, we may not get it right the first time, but, you know, we'll try it. But I do like that quite a bit. I like what I hear on it.
As most everybody knows, or you don't, I'm Marge Phillips. I'm a retired teacher. And Kurt knows because I wrote to him personally. I collect a pension. My pension from teaching in the city of Detroit is under $20,000. I retired in 1993, and the formula figures out what your pension is. Now, I went back and I became a teacher in Detroit for 2.5 years under a special program, and I was making $67,500. No benefits, it was, I said, it was a special funded program. Had I retired at that rate, I might be making close to 40. But I am one of the teachers, and many, many of us that you may know, do not make anything approaching 40,000. There are many teachers who married teachers in the state of Michigan who may be together making that. And I said to Kurt when I wrote to him, this was before things finalized and he already had a suspicion, I said, I don't mind paying taxes. I have become part of a group, which he knows is the Tea Party, who is trying to reduce the cost and to raise the income. And if I'm going to be taxed, so be it. Now, fortunately, from the sounds of it, I may not be. But I am a teacher, and I did not make anywhere near enough to, in today's income, I am under $20,000 in my pension. And I get a little raise every year because I'm on a special program. I get like $40 a month raise. When I first retired, I was only making $13,000. So I considered that one thing about the teaching, when I went into it, I was 40. So everybody who knows me here knows I'm also the oldest sub in the state of Michigan, age 81. And believe me, I can still take care of any class, including the worst of that. In Damrow, they told me nobody could handle it. And I'll tell that little story as a side. I walked into this 7th grade classroom, supposed to be the worst class they'd ever had, and they told me the program was put the name on the board, and then we're gonna, they get 3 checks, and they're gonna do something. I had 2 boys' names on the board, it just so happened. And I called the office, and I said, I have 2 boys on the board. How many push-ups can I make them do? Assistant principal came, showed up so fast, looked at the 2 and said 25. I never had a problem with that class the rest of the day. It isn't what you do, it's how you do it. But anyways, I want to let you know that before you get angry at all of us, especially I'm so short, I don't want you getting mad at me. That's one of my personality quirks. Be sure you think about that not everyone is on that $45,000 or $40,000 a year pension. And so one of the reasons I still sub is I like to do things above and beyond what I get on my pension and my Social Security. And if I want to do it, I got to go work. And it doesn't matter what age. If I want to spend money, I got to work. But anyways, I'm back now. My Thursday classes have ended. And I should be here for the rest of the season till the signing classes start again. My 4.5-year-old great-grandson, I can't communicate with him.
Now you guys knew better. I wish I could put Marge in the trunk or my duffel bag and just take her to Lansing and say, now if we can't work this out DEQ, I'm bringing Marge out. And she's over 80 years old and she will tear you to pieces. Another question. Let's go to the education thing. I've only got a few minutes here.
That's what I was going to.
Yeah.
You said everybody should come to their library to get extra help or whatever. Well, let me tell you, the libraries are being cut.
Right.
They aren't even getting money from the state.
On the budget,
And
it was
so-
another $1 million, I believe, is what they had on the budget.
Well, let's see it. Show me the money.
No. That's what they said they were going to cut.
Cut. Okay.
Right. Oh,
That's
God, I know.
what
I
cut.
said the same thing.
And that is in the education department too. But what would this town be without our library?
And we've got a couple schools in the 84th district that have closed their school libraries already in order to say that's their first cuts. I did have a talk with the governor during our coffee hour about that. And I feel like I think we're going to be okay. One area where I'm hoping won't be cut, and that $1 million is a lot of money. But again, it's not a lot when you compare what our return is. And so as we get into one of these committees I'm hoping to be setting on, actually I had hoped to have a call from the governor here this week on a committee that he asked if I would set on. It's one of the things we're going to present. And that's one thing I did have a very short talk to him. I said, really, we can't afford to have this cut in rural areas. I don't think you realize how important our rural libraries are right now. We have so many people, guess what they've turned off? Cable television has been turned off by so many people in our state of Michigan, where they're down to, if they've got to have one thing, they usually keep the computer, so they can at least communicate, because if they lose the cell phones, that still gives them a line of communication to get something out. You can hook up those phone jacks, a Magic Jack or something for $2 or $3 a month, it'll at least give you a telephone to your house. But we're down to a very small percentage of people that still even have cable television, and even a smaller percentage that at least have the internet service. What that leads to is, where do you go? You know, you're trying to do job applications, you're trying to put your resume out there, and you're not just doing it in Vassar, you're doing it maybe the whole state of Michigan, you're doing it in the entire United States. You can't afford to have anything hooked up. Very few people really have the internet. We've talked about these websites and these email notices and things that we send out, even from my office. I said, guys, it's very limited. We cut back quite a bit. My office, we're not doing the mailers. You may have seen them in the past. But you know what, 90%, maybe 95% of that gets thrown in the trash. And I just said, I told my office staff, we're not going to do it. We'll keep things very limited. When people call, if they want something, we'll send it to you. Trust me, we'll put it in the mail. But why send it to 92,000 people? You know, once a month or every 2 or 3 months. So going back to the library here.
Well, I want to go
Sure.
back to the education department. I'm involved with the Dolly Parton Imagination Library, and I know for a fact
That sounds like fun.
that is fun. But
Dolly Parton Imagination Library.
yes,
All right, guys. Yeah.
Anyway, at the board meeting, it was brought to our attention that 44% of the kindergarten kids that were tested in Tuscola County are not ready for kindergarten. So your cuts to education.
Well, hang on that one, because you saw that was the one of only 2 areas where the government increased drastically was the pre-K funding.
Okay.
Dramatically, and very strongly supported by the governor as the pre-K program.
Kids
Yeah.
that can't read end up in prison
Mm-hmm.
eventually because they can't get jobs
You're
or
right.
whatever. So that's very important education.
That's a good one that'll lead all the way back to this question we had here a while
Yes.
back, is on education, and you talked about lost money, or we talked about maybe $75 or $80, whatever goes to Detroit. On the education side, there's going to be some real changes there. Of course, you've heard a lot about the emergency financial managers that have been voted in. You've heard some things about teacher tenure being gone. Yeah, that probably will be gone. And I don't hear from any of the legislators, let's go get the teachers. I don't hear them saying, let's go get the teachers union. They're not saying that. Yeah, we have some heartache with the MEA. I do. I read some of the things that they send to the teachers. I've got a lot of teachers in my family. And they show me these letters and I go, you've got to be kidding me. Of course, usually they're mad at me when I walk in the door until I get to read it and we get to talk about it. I say, I'm sorry, that's not true at all. What you have right here in front of you from the MEA that's not true. That's an absolute lie. And that really burns me up, is the fact that these good teachers have such poor representation. They really do. There's 2 teachers unions here. One's a lot better than the other one, I can guarantee you. And I've talked with both of them. So there is very poor representation. Calling these teachers for an illegal strike, asking them all to vote to walk out. They want to do it before the kids graduate so they have some leverage. Well, what about these kids? And I keep hearing this on the backs of the children, on the backs of the children. Well, you know what, let's go on strike. We have schools right now that are paying 80 to 96% of what they take in goes to teacher wages, pensions, and benefits. And I'm not slamming the teachers on it. That's some of the things that we have to deal with. And I asked the guy that chairs the House Committee on Education, said, how did they, Bill Rogers sits right beside me on the House floor, I said, how are they open? He says, I have no idea. We don't know how some of these schools are keeping their doors open when they're paying 93% of what they take in on pensions, wages, and benefits. What does that leave? That's why a lot of these schools have to go after sinking funds. What is that? That's another tax on you. That's more millage. That's more money you have to pay because of what a school board did to put themselves in that position. Now, how do they negotiate themselves out of that? They don't. Because you can't force the teachers to come to the table. I mean, the contract is that strong. You are stuck. And what this does now with the new emergency financial manager, it says, listen, you're going to have 10% of your money in reserve. If you don't do that, that could put you in the position where the 18 points, there's little switches we keep hitting until we get to 18, that requires that we send an emergency financial manager in. We can't do it with education anymore. On average in the state of Michigan, I believe it's $11,137 per student. Okay, you got 30 kids in a classroom. That's over $300,000 a year during the 150 days or so of school. We can't educate 30 kids for $300 and some thousand a year. Of course, we never had bicycle helmets back in the day, and we never had a lot of other things, but that just blows me away when they start putting those numbers like that together. Now, do we get that up here? No, we don't get the full $11,137. I think, Dean, you remember the school board, or you've been on the board. I think we get about $8,000, $9,000. $7,000?
Yes.
So 7 with everything else, in the thumb area, we're probably between the $7,000 to $9,000 per student. Mark, but you know what's that put us at? Okay, we're at $250,000 a year, we can't educate 30 kids in the classroom. We still have some problems. But again, we can't figure out what's going on. Now down in the city of Detroit, we're looking at 300 teachers just in the Detroit school district making over $100,000 a year. Okay, that's $100,000 in wages, plus a pension, plus a benefit package. You know, was it 200 and some million over the last 2 years? I think was basically unaccounted for. Now don't hold me to that, but I think it was 240 or 248 million. They have so many problems down there. You know, yeah, Kwame, yeah, he didn't help. Thank God he wasn't on the school board. But I'm sure a lot of his family were members of the school board, relatives in some way.
Well, I'm probably not going to have a real
It's okay.
I'm not going to be very popular. I think it's anti-teacher, but I also want you to understand the MEA is working real hard, and they're not lying about everything. And I guess I'd just like to say a few things,
Sure.
if that's okay. Education is a whole lot cheaper. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm nervous.
That's all right. No, I'm here for you.
Education is a whole lot cheaper than incarceration. And I'm really questioning, I came here tonight to ask why punitive and punishing actions toward teachers. I myself put between $8,000 to $10,000 in my classroom every year.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because my school district can't afford things like erasers and stuff. I make sure my students have a good education. But the individuality of students, we're not allowing for that anymore when we say that every student has to be at this level. That's not always possible. And we're working our behinds off. Plus, you know, it's not a 9-to-5 job. I don't just go home.
Right.
I'm up sometimes at 3 o'clock in the morning correcting papers after being up till 11 o'clock. So I wanted you to associate a teacher's face with this, that some of you think we're pretty worthless. Well, that's not true.
No, that's not true. I know that. We're not saying that. My mom retired as a teacher's aide at $8 an hour with hardly any benefits after 35 years.
You know,
And,
I guess that's my question, Representative Damrow, is, you know, I'd like you to get some teachers down there and ask us some questions as to how this is going to impact us.
And that's what the teachers need to do. You know what the teachers need to tell? And I've had several union groups where the people that they represent finally said enough is enough. You know, tell the union to stay in their office and you come talk to us.
I called your office
We know that.
and left a message yesterday.
And that's why I'm here. I went to your house, but you weren't here at the But you know what? We're going to have something, and I'll talk just a little bit briefly. I know we're running out of time here. But no one's attacking the teachers. We do understand that. You know what? Unfortunately, as many of these contracts, not up here, really it's not the rural districts that have put us in this extreme mess. We have a lot of teachers up here that make, you know, I think most of the starting pay we looked at here was probably $30,000 to $60,000, most of our paychecks up here. Where many of the other schools, like the one lady from Pontiac who testified, because she got her master's degree, she started out in Pontiac at I think $38,000 a year, 6 years to get her master's degree, and I think she was at $85,000. She teaches the same class that she had. Here's the same class, but this is what gets me. You teach the same class, you get the same things, and you get your master's degree, and you bump up $50,000 because you got your master's degree, and I understand some of that was even negotiated to be paid for by the school. You're teaching the same thing. Well, so why do we have to hire, you know, I'm not going to hire a professor to come mow my lawn. I'm going to hire a kid that'll do, that professor may not even do nearly as good a job, but he's going to want $400 or $500 an hour. And I get the kid for $10 to do the whole yard. And that's where we have some problems. Sure. And I've talked with a number of teachers. Trust me, I've had a few letters, a couple emails, not any great cards yet, but you know, education is going to take some major reform. The guy that I worked with, I talked about Jason Allen, the Department of Veterans Affairs. When he was in the Senate here the previous term, he was the guy that was sent in from the Senate to clean up the Detroit school system. They actually had to put state police bodyguards on him and his family for the death threats. And it's not easy right now, guys. This isn't peaches and cream being a legislator. You know, we've had more death threats and threats over the last couple of, 30 days. My house was broken into about 2 weeks ago. We tried to get the chief of police to come out here, and we showed him that. My wife went in the house, kids stayed in the car, she went in the house. When she went to the attic to look inside, I could just about shoot her for that. She walked into the house to see what was going on, goes to the attic, somebody turned the breakers off in the house while she was in the house at 9 o'clock at night. She went out, gets the kids, runs to the neighbors, and some of our remarkable law enforcement, our finest, that responded said, well, we can't believe anybody was in the house because they didn't take your plasma TV. Somebody turned the breakers off while she's in the attic. You know, I mean, this is some of the things that we're going through. There's a number of guys that have had threats and death threats, and we're going to, you know, if you touch our pension, by God, we'll kill you. You know, well, geez, you know, it's, we're going to have to make some changes, but you know what? That's what we're living with. It's a tough time. The school system, anyways, the $248 million, yeah, I believe a lot of money has been dumped into the city of Detroit. For schools up here, what we're looking at, now there's $175, I believe, that was proposed from the previous year's budget. I think the governor's proposal is to tack on $300. There's about, I think there's two accounts, one for municipalities and one for education. I think it's about $300 million, $200 to $300 million that is being set aside for best practices. I feel, and I've been meeting with our superintendents, and we'll continue to meet with them over the next couple of weeks. We're going to start doing proposals to go after our percentage by doing best practices to get maybe a good chunk of that money, the $300 per student that was going to be cut. I feel we can get it back. I don't have all the details, but there's 4 points on the dashboard for municipalities, and I believe 4 points for school systems. And you can kind of see when you talk about those numbers, and most of the rural areas are going to qualify to get that money back. With a lot of the cities, how are they going to show best practices? They're only graduating 10% of their students. You know, they're not going to turn. We pitched hundreds of millions of dollars, and they couldn't turn it around. So it probably won't happen this year. So my thought is that $200 million kind of fills in for what the rural schools would have taken a $300 per student cut in.
I only have one word, voucher. Right.
Yeah, that's come up quite a bit, and then actually, what do you call the non-public schools? Charter schools. Charter schools. And what I understand is the city of Detroit, actually, they said they're going to close half their schools, and the half that they're going to close, they're going to offer up a number of them for charter schools. So we'll see how that works down there. That ought to be really interesting.
I heard that it costs more money for a prison guy, out of the tax dollar than it does for the kids in school. Is that true?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That's stupid.
God, we have so many prisons. Unbelievable. You know, I think we just closed Coldwater, and like I said, out of all the National Guard buildings, we've got some buildings in the National Guard that are 87 years old, and we talked about trying to get them in some new locations. And I said, let's take a look at some of the prisons we closed, and making those National Guard armories and closing these 80-plus-year-old buildings. But you're right. Yeah, it does cost more to be a prisoner than it does what we put into education. Well, that's because we don't give the students dental, and we don't give them their prescriptions, and psychiatrists, and their medical, and you get a lot more than room and board.
What's your take on the new MSP building in Bay City?
You know, that's my committee, and I'm very disappointed that I didn't see any of that, but that's from the previous administration. I don't know where their contract is, if that can be canceled or what it is. Michigan State Police is a committee that I have with Homeland
And
Defense.
they could use the president Standish, it isn't that far. They need a lot of big buildings to camp out in, and park their police cars or whatever.
Well, we got, you know, again, we'd have to take a look at that.
Just a little humor.
I'll tell you, no, I understand.
Lots of buildings around that are empty right now.
Like I said, we've got a ton of them in the state of Michigan. I did support, and one of my proposals was for the regionalization of the Michigan State Police. We'll actually put more troopers on the road than what we have at these current facilities. And, you know, there's a lot of things I could discuss with law enforcement that needs to be addressed, but that could be another 2 hours.
They're closing all these police posts, and they're going to build a new big one in Bay City.
Right.
That's what I was referring to.
Right.
Is that really?
You know, the only thing I've really seen on that is through the Bay City Times. I don't know where the contract is on that. It's the same thing that this new building that we're paying tens of millions of dollars for in downtown Lansing when we paid $1 lease. That was Mike Green's campaign. Yeah.
Just a quick one. I question why we have to have so many sports programs in one school district. I mean, sportsmanship, teamwork is fine, wonderful, except that we need football, basketball, tennis, swimming, track, and on and on. All those programs cost money.
You see, a lot of those have been cut, and you know, this goes back a few years with Michigan High School Athletic Association, is that, you know, the boys basketball program and the boys football program for years took in enough money to fund a lot of the other programs. And then the MHSAA and certain attorney groups said, we also have to offer the thing for the girls, we have to have this for the boys, and then this for the girls, and this for the boys, and it kept going on and on and on. But now you're seeing that many of the sports programs have been cut. You know, and I hate to see that cut. I hate to see art programs cut, and it just kills me to see music programs cut.
Kurt, I'll let you take one more question, and then these people that didn't get to ask him a question, maybe you can see him outside the library afterwards.
Yeah, I'm going to stick around
because we have to have the library closed at 8 o'clock, so that's where we're at right now. But this lady over here had a question.
Yes, I have a comment.
Yes.
As a retired teacher, I suppose I knew this. Teachers are not the enemy. I think we all can agree on that. There are many good teachers, and there's some bad teachers. The enemy is the unions.
Right.
The unions are the ones that have put education in the problem where it is today. The head of the NEA said his primary focus was not on your children or your grandchildren, but on their power.
That's right. In revenue, them making revenue. Could we get one quick? This is a.
In education, why do we have a superintendent at the school? Other states, they have superintendents.
Yep. Good question. Superintendent, people have screamed, they said, what's wrong with you guys? You know, we're wasting all this money on superintendents. You know, by law, we could not, a superintendent had to stay with each school. You could have one or you didn't have one, but you couldn't share a superintendent. And because of school of choice, a lot of the sharing things that we're working on right now, you got to be somewhat careful because you have someone that's going to be in charge. I might come over here and represent Carroll School, but I'm also going to be the superintendent for Vassar. Okay, where is my allegiance? There may be some question there because of school of choice. I might want to do a little bit more over here in Carroll, and people in Vassar are saying, you know what, you're bringing some of our students up here. What's going on? But that was changed by law. We do have the bill in. It has been, it did go through committee. We voted on that. I believe it's out of committee. That will allow a superintendent to handle a number of school districts. Probably the best location for a superintendent may not be sharing them from school to school because of school of choice. I brought that up in committee about conflict of interest, just to make sure we didn't run into that problem. Probably better off from an ISD type location to take care and satellite out as an independent that's not going to benefit by who goes into different schools.
Ohio has something like that where it's an ISD.
Right.
One superintendent for the city of Louisville, which is the biggest city in the state of Kentucky.
Yeah.
One superintendent.
Yeah, so we had to get the legislation through. The legislation is through, so you can now share superintendents. But
Could I have a hand for Kurt? Because thank you very much.